It's not 2%. What it is, I don't know. But I do know that the worst is yet to come. There's this kind of a phenomenon that's existed for quite a while, which is the United States has been the greatest inflator of the currency that the world has ever seen. And yet, both the official inflation rate and the observed inflation rate, which is probably more like 3 times the official rate, but both of them together are not as high as you might expect, considering the tremendous amounts of money that's being created at the Federal Reserve level. You know, the QE1, QE2, and all of these hidden things are going, just massive amounts, billions and trillions of dollars flooding into the economy. And yet the inflation is still not like it was in Hungary or Nazi Germany or in Zimbabwe or places like that. It's still like you can live with it, it seems. How come? Where's the inflation going? And the answer to that is it's going overseas. It's actually, I used to hear this expression, the United States is exporting its inflation. And I didn't understand what that meant. I thought, how can you take inflation, put it in a box and seal it and send it overseas? And then I found out, well, it simply meant that it's something called the euro dollars. It has nothing to do with Europe because these dollars go all around the world. The fact is that many countries of the world have debauched their currency even worse than the United States. And they cannot even use their local currencies, like in Zimbabwe, for example. They can't use their local currencies for any kind of meaningful economic transaction. If you want to buy a house or open up a business or buy an automobile or make any kind of a significant financial transaction, you have to use something other than Zimbabwe dollars. And so all these nations of the world are anxious to use somebody else's money. Well, it just so happens that the United States, for all of these years, has been the choice. Mainly, I think, because we've always had the strongest economy and also the strongest military. Let's not forget that part of it. And nobody wants to cross swords with the United States because the military is always available to make that seem like a big mistake. So anyway, for whatever reason, many hundreds of countries around the world, or at least over 100 countries, have been using American dollars as their secondary, or really their primary currency. And so they're hungry for more and more American dollars. So no matter how many we produce here in the United States, they can go overseas and people gobble them up and use them for their currency. So we have, in that sense, exported our inflation. But now we're entering into a new phase in history where countries all around the world are beginning to question the usefulness of continuing to use the American dollar. Because they see the numbers, they see how much of this currency is being created and flooded out, and they realize that the United States itself now is getting into an economic pinch. And they're beginning to question whether this is wise to continue to use American dollars. And some nations have even come to the point where they said, no more. It used to be you could go into some little country, and no matter what country, they'll take American dollars. Now, there are places in the world they do not take American dollars anymore. And that is just the beginning. We're going to see more and more of that. Now, that means that all of these dollars that are overseas being circulated around the world are going to gradually become, less and less attractive, less desirable, and these countries are going to wonder, what do we do with these dollars? Well, that's when they send them back to the United States to get whatever purchasing power they can with them before they don't buy anything. So they're coming back to the United States right now, in case you haven't noticed. They're coming back to buy up real estate. Look at the Japanese and the Middle Eastern countries are buying up huge blocks of valuable real estate. They're buying up stocks in our industry. A lot of our industry is now wholly owned by foreigners. They're buying up banks. They're buying up whole downtown sections in some cities. They're buying up anything that's for sale, like politicians, depends. Whatever they can buy with this American dollar before it's useless is coming back to the United States. And as this accelerates and this trend continues, all of this deferred inflation that we should have seen at the time that the money was first created, and we didn't because we exported it, now it's deferred inflation coming back, and I think the time is very soon when this is going to rise like a flood, and it'll be a delayed effect, but it will be a devastating effect on the purchasing power of the American dollar.
So deferred inflation leading into hyperinflation will arrive. How do we protect ourselves?
How do we protect ourselves from this phenomenon? Well, I think there are two ways. First of all, at a personal level, and the short-term level, let's call it that, the short-term level versus the long-term view. On a short-term basis, we can protect ourselves best by getting off of the railroad track. You know, if you're standing on a railroad track and you see a train down there about a half a mile away, and it's coming right at you and honking the horn and blowing the horn, and you think, I guess I better get off this track. If you don't, you're going to be mowed over. We're on the track of inflation now. We can see it happening. We see the train down there, and it's coming. It's getting closer and closer. And that track of inflation I'm talking about is currency, U.S. dollars. Other nations have the same problem with their own currency. It's holding national money systems as a reserve for your savings. If we stay on the track and continue to use money, national money, as the medium of expression of our savings, we are going to be mowed down. So what do we do to protect ourselves? Get off the track to whatever extent you can. You've got to keep some money in the banks, of course, because you've got to pay bills, and that's the medium of exchange. You write checks and so forth on currency. You've got to keep some money for that. And I think everybody should have a little stash of currency put aside, so in case the banks close their doors and their credit card systems don't work and they won't honor checks, at least you have some currency. You can buy things with it. But ultimately, if you have larger amounts of reserve, more savings, you've got to get out of currency entirely. And I hate to say it, but that talks about all of I'm talking about your investments that are invested in terms of money, like insurance policies and things like that. People are depending on cash value insurance plans, and they go, oh, good, I'm going to retire. I got $1 million retirement plan, and by the time that comes, it might not even buy a postage stamp. You know, get off the track. That's how you protect yourself in the short term. But in the long term, there is no protection if the system continues to go. We have to turn the system around. We have to change the direction of the political and economic trends in all of our countries. We have to awaken the people to understand what's happening and bring about a political reform. Otherwise, there is no hope, because the whole thing ends in a train wreck, in a sense. Not only did the train mow us down, but at the end there's a trestle missing and the whole thing collapses. And I hate to even envision that. It's happened in other countries. There is no survival in those systems where the the nation collapses. It ends in chaos and riots and anarchy and perhaps invasion from some other country that sees them as an easy mark because of the chaos and so forth. And we don't want to go there. The only long-term survival is to change the system, and that starts with awakening of the people of the world as to what money really is. Once they understand that, then we have a chance to turn this around.